The 2020 NHL playoffs are set to begin, and today I'm giving you my predictions on the round-robin tournament to determine the top 4 seeds in the Eastern and Western Conference. And that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, today we're doing some predictions again for the 2020 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, talking about the round-robin tournament that we're going to see to determine the top 4 seeds in both the Eastern and Western Conference. In the Eastern Conference, you have the 4 teams competing in this tournament. You have the Tampa Bay Lightning, you have the Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins, and the Philadelphia Flyers. Of course, in the Western Conference, the top 4 seeds in that tournament will be the Dallas Stars, the Colorado Avalanche, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the defending Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues. Now, of course, we saw these teams go through training camp. We saw each of these teams play one exhibition game, which I know is a small sample size. And, of course, this was the first game that these teams have played in about 4 months or so. So you're bound to get some rust and some things that are not going exactly as to plan. Some teams looked really good, though, right off the bat. And I do think that a lot of this year's playoffs results are going to be determined by the teams who can adapt the quickest and the fastest and really get into a good groove here. Obviously, this is a very unique tournament. It's a unique set of circumstances. You're playing in arenas with no fans. It's a whole different thing, and I think the teams who can make those adjustments and kind of get down to business and really hit their stride quickly are going to be the ones that see the most success, which is really the case a lot of times with playoffs. You're going to need a hot goaltender, some strong defense, and some timely scoring. Those are your 3 main ingredients for playoff success and going on for a chance to win a Stanley Cup. Obviously, you need a deep team as well because you're bound to run into some injuries. Some of these teams already have some injuries that were either left over from the regular season or that they've run into during their brief training camps getting ready to come back and play. Now, taking a look at the Eastern Conference teams, we saw the Tampa Bay Lightning really hammer the Florida Panthers 5-0, and that was without Hedman and Stamkos in the lineup for that exhibition game. So Tampa really appeared to be raring to go. Of course, they had some strong performances from guys like Kucherov and Point. Vasilevsky was good in the net as well. You had Boston, on the other hand, who was one of the top teams in the league all year long, kind of put up a stinker and lose a 4-1 game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets played a very sound defensive game, had some good goaltending. Tuukka Rask was not great for the Bruins, and they didn't get a lot of timely plays. Even though David Pastrnak missed all of training camp, he ended up scoring a goal and looked like he was one of their better players. So I guess from that perspective, things are good. But the Bruins are certainly going to need to reset quickly and play a much better game than what they actually did against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, the good news here for all of these teams as well, they're not in the play-in series. The play-in series are a best of 5 where if you lose a few games, you can be going home quickly. Whereas in this little tournament, to determine the top 4 seeds, they're going to play each other all one time, so they're going to play 3 games, and it's only to determine the seeding. Worst case scenario, they end up with the number 4 seed. They do have to play a stronger opponent in the playoffs, but at least it's going to be a best of 7 when they do, and they have every opportunity to kind of have a little bit more normalcy after they get through that. So by the time they play a playoff game that has meaning for them to either move on or go home, they're going to have 3 round-robin games and an exhibition game under their belt, which is more than the play-in teams can actually say. They got 1 game, and then they're going right into games that have a major impact on the remainder of their season here. Now, of course, in the Western Conference, we saw the Dallas Stars struggle to score, and they lost their exhibition game against the Nashville Predators. We saw the St. Louis Blues put up a stinker against Chicago. They lost 4-0. Both Binnington and Allen allowed 2 goals each. They couldn't get any offense going. We did see the Avalanche with a 3-2 win over Minnesota. They had a pretty solid game, and Vegas had a pretty solid 4-1 victory over the Coyotes. So certainly going to be interesting to see here how we go. Now, when it comes to these teams, to rank these teams, how I feel they're going to come out 1 through 4. Let's start here first with the Eastern Conference. Personally, I think the team with the strongest goaltending is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Vasilevsky, I think, is the top goaltender amongst these 4 teams. He's been the most consistent as well. Next up, I'd say probably Braden Holtby. He's not that far removed from a long playoff run with the Capitals. The Capitals look like a really solid team as well. The Caps looked really strong as well against the Canes in their exhibition game. Holtby looked pretty good. He's not going to have Samsonov backing him up or taking the starting job from him. So this is really a major opportunity for Holtby. So I think he's going to seize the moment here to really put together a strong performance that's going to lead to a new contract for him next year, whether it be with Washington or elsewhere. But his performance in these playoffs could have a very big impact on his next contract. Next up, I'm going to say the Philadelphia Flyers are the third most consistent goaltending here with Carter Hart. And I'm putting Boston last just because Tuukka Rask has had too many moments in the playoffs where he's let the Bruins down. But at the same time, like, he did do better last year, but then this exhibition game wasn't a good game. So really right now, kind of not real sure about what we're going to get from Rask in these playoffs. So I'm kind of putting him near the bottom, but I still think this Boston team has too much leadership and too much experience, and I do expect him to do much better than we saw against Columbus. So in the Eastern Conference, I'm going to say that the Tampa Bay Lightning is my prediction to win the top seed. They obviously were a top team in the regular season. They dominated against the Florida Panthers without a couple of their top players. Tampa should have these other guys back in the lineup for this tournament as well, and I just expect them to be the most well-balanced team here amongst the group. Now, next up, I'm going to say the Washington Capitals will come in at number 2. I think overall, hopefully he's going to do well in that. Like I said, his contract next year and beyond is going to depend on it. Ovechkin showed that he's ready to roll here based on how he performed in their exhibition game as well. Doesn't seem to be any rust on him. And overall, I think the Washington Capitals just seem to be a really strong team. I do think the Caps are going to be a major threat to go deep here in these playoffs. Next up, I'm going to say we have the Boston Bruins coming in at number 3. I think there's just too much experience there. I think the Bruins are going to get it together. They may not have a great round robin, but they'll do well enough to at least grab that number 3 spot. And of course, that puts the Flyers in at 4th. But really, overall, it's good. It's really tough to predict, I think, because all 4 of these teams, I think, are really solid teams. They had some really good regular seasons before the NHL pause. And really, we've seen kind of some different performances here so far in exhibition games, but I think we could see some differences again when it comes time, when it counts. Now, the Flyers are a team who was red hot before the pause. They're kind of hard for me to put in that number 4 spot. I just look at the lineups here between Tampa and Washington and Boston and just see all that experience and all that recent success, and it's just hard to rank Philadelphia ahead of them, but I really wouldn't take any of these teams lightly when we get to the next round, when these teams get into their first playoff series in the round of 16. But that's my prediction for 1 through 4 in the Eastern Conference. Now, in the Western Conference, if you take a look at goaltending, I think Dallas probably has the strongest tandem with Bishop and Hudobin, but I do think Fleury and Leonard in Vegas is a really close second. I think those two teams could very well end up with some hot goaltending, which could lead to a lot of success in the 2020 NHL playoffs. I think next up, you're going to take a look at St. Louis. Of course, you had last year, Jordan Binnington led this team with a lot of hot goaltending to a Stanley Cup. Jake Allen's performed better this year than last year's, able to play a little bit more, but neither one of them really looked, really solid in that exhibition game. I don't think they really looked bad either, but certainly not the kind of performance to kind of steal the game, which they very well might need, because I think these playoffs are going to be very interesting and very closely matched amongst all these teams. Now, of course, Colorado I'm going to put on the bottom of the list when it comes to goaltending, just because of a lack of experience and consistency. Although they're overall a strong team, and I do expect them to be a major threat here. When it comes to team defense overall, I think Dallas again is probably, between Dallas and St. Louis, are the strongest 2 out of the 4. Both those teams have a lot of experience back there. We saw the St. Louis Blues blue line be a really big factor in them winning the Stanley Cup last year, and they very well are going to be a big factor if they're going to have any chance to do it again. I'd probably say Vegas is the next one for team defense, followed by the Dallas Stars, followed by the Colorado Avalanche. I don't think they have a weak blue line, but obviously they have some very young and dynamic players back there, like a Cale Makar and Sam Girard, but offense is certainly more of their strong point right now at this stage of their career. But overall, I really think when it comes to timely scoring, though, you're going to look at the Avalanche as probably being the most explosive out of those teams, with the Blues in Vegas probably right in the middle, and Dallas is a little bit unpredictable. They certainly have had their issues scoring at times this year as well. So here is my predictions for the top 4 teams in the Western Conference. Personally, I'm going to say that the Avalanche pull it out and take number 1. I know I said that they were not the best when it comes to goaltending and team defense, but I think that timely scoring is going to come in bunches. I think the goaltending and defense is going to hold up enough to win a few of these games and grab that number 1 seed. I'd say that Vegas takes the number 2 spot. I think Vegas, with their solid goaltending and solid forwards, I think Vegas is a pretty deep team overall. They're going to get some good goaltending regardless of who they go with, and I can see them taking the number 2 spot. I'm going to say St. Louis Blues, the defending Stanley Cup champion, will come in 3rd. It might start a little bit slow like they did last year, but they are going to be a threat long-term in these playoffs, and I would not want to be playing them when it gets to the first round. And lastly here, I think the Dallas Stars are going to be the 4th seeded team heading into the next round as well. I don't have a lot of confidence in Dallas. I need to see more from them. I mean, guys like Seguin and Ben just have not been consistent, and even though they have some pretty solid goaltending and a decent blue line, I'm not convinced that they have the necessary offense to score those timely goals to really get over the hump here. So I think we're going to see lots of competitive hockey, but unfortunately I put the Dallas Stars most likely to finish in the number 4 spot in the Western Conference. So those are my predictions for the round robin and how these teams are going to finish. I'd love to know what your thoughts are, so give me your predictions down below so we can discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.